So good evening, everybody. Thank you for joining. Welcome to the 1 hour webinar tonight. This is a free webinar sponsored by myself, Brian Singer of Sierra Bravo on Target Training. I became a USCCA instructor a few months ago. So this is some of my outreach and getting familiar with a lot of the material, but I was really impressed with the USCCA's material when I went and took their instructor course. And so I actually went on to take additional certifications with them, including the course that we're going to talk about a little bit tonight, which is the countering the mass shooter threat. I also took their emergency first aid and trauma response. So between any of their concealed carry or defensive pistol usage courses, their countering the mass shooter threat, or their emergency first aid and trauma response, I'm currently certified to teach any of those courses. This is going to be a 1 hour introduction to countering the mass shooter threat. One of the things that really struck me about the course when I took the instructor certification was the research and the data behind a lot of these mass shootings. It really just struck me. And the first title that jumped in my mind is "Everything You've Heard About Mass Shootings is Wrong," right? I realize that some of us probably already are familiar with some of these and things like magazine size and rates of fire. But I wanted to really get people's attention because I thought I knew a lot about this subject, and the USCCA's material I thought was very, very good and in-depth on this. So my name again is Brian Singer. I'm a U.S. Army veteran, an instructor with USCCA. I've had over 30 years as well in the industrial cybersecurity space and critical infrastructure. All that really is to say that my entire career and professional life, in both personal and professional life, has been involved in risk management in one way or another. I've participated and been belted in a number of martial arts and armed and unarmed combatives over the years. Father of three, stepfather to three, grandfather, this is scary, to one, enthusiast of many extreme sports, and had a lifetime of risk management in both private and my personal life. So that's enough about me. I want to jump right in. About my training philosophy and what we're doing within Sierra Bravo is I really do look at a 3-tier foundation for everything. So number one is really building your awareness, your situational awareness, learning how to live better and more in touch with the world around you. You're not going to hear me say things like head on a swivel and some of that stuff you hear. People, oh, you got to be situationally aware. I really do believe in bringing the realistic aspect of how do you live your life in a more connected way with the folks around you, with the situation around you, and paying attention, because ultimately that is what's going to make you a better person, better connected to the people around you, more aware of the needs of people around you. And yes, it is going to potentially prepare you to either prevent or respond to dangerous threats. Okay? From awareness, that is your first level of skill. We look now into where we spend our time, which is in preparedness. This is primarily is going to be on avoidance strategies, how to avoid situations and use of force in the first place, getting the right training, the right practice, enhancing your skills, perfecting your everyday carry, the things that you keep with you, both armed and unarmed, understanding armed combatives, things like weapon retention, and if you do have to use your firearm in a defensive capacity, what that situation is going to be like, physiologically, physically, legally, both before, during, and after, the things that are going to happen to you. And I'm also a fundamental believer that the more I teach folks about what these situations actually look like, the more you're going to want to try to avoid them. So I've really come over the last few years to explore and perfect a lot of the different techniques behind like body mechanics in your shooting style, how to gain accurate shots, how to do target transitions, how to be very lethal with your firearm if you're required to do so, but also, to dispel a lot of the myths about shooting sports and, introduce folks to the fact that this can be a lot of fun and it's a skill sport that you can spend your entire life getting better at. Once you get better at your preparedness and getting ready for those days and refining and honing those skills, we then want to look at the application of those in daily life. So practicing your plan, sharpening the sword, refreshing those skills, enhancement, skill extension, learning new things. Like I said, about 2 years ago, I went through a whole refresh of my own skills on defensive pistol usage, body mechanics, use of force situations, and again, kind of culminating over the last few months in becoming an instructor with USCCA and expanding those skills on to include first aid, countering the mass shooter. And my goal is I'm going to continue to improve my own set of skills and be able to offer more as an instructor and bring, again, some of the really try to bring a realistic and pragmatic view to the world of defensive firearms usage and firearm safety and preparedness. So one more question for the mass shooter. We're going to be talking about mass shooter threat tonight. This, again, is going to be about a 1 hour introduction to what is about a day-long course. I will talk about that a little bit in the end, but the goal for this 1 hour session is to really hit some of those high points that really stuck out to me when I took the instructor certification that I'm like, I want to make sure I get more information out to people so that not only are they more aware of what the realistic threats are, or importantly, what I really have as a goal is to create better advocates in your communities, right? Folks that know how to stand up and say what is right, what is wrong about these, the truth and the myths behind a lot of the mass shooter threat, what the realistic threats are, but also to realize that what we're being told from a defensive perspective and from how to avoid and limit the lethality or the occurrence of these is fundamentally not only wrong, but actually is probably making things more dangerous for folks and contributing to the problem being even greater than people realize. My goal is for you to realize what some of the pragmatic skills are that people can use during these events. Also, they can use to identify the source of potential mass shooters. But also, more importantly, if you are a part of a mass shooter event, how to survive, how to help others, and realistic defenses we have seen, things that we've seen tested and proven, and pragmatic approaches to actually protecting our schools, workplaces, churches, places of worship, the public. There are techniques out there that work, and I will tell you right now, they have very little to do with what your magazine size is and your rates of fire. So how much do you all think, just as a question, how much does magazine capacity, rate of fire relate to mass shooting events? Is it they cause more people to be injured or killed because you have higher round, magazine capacity, more rounds? They reduce accuracy, so less people are going to be killed, or they have no direct relationship to the number of people killed? Anybody care to take a wager? There will be no wrong answer. We can ask this again at the end if you wish.
I'm guessing number 3.
No.
The direct relationship to the number of people killed.
That'll be my argument. That's kind of my argument. I believe that's the argument.
Drum don't know how to use it. The jams.
That's a great point, actually, Matt. You're right. So you've seen people. In fact, actually, that is one of the cases that's explored in the bigger course, is that they use a drum magazine and they don't realize they're going to spend more time unjamming the drum than they are firing it most of the time. Right. So, yep. So really, I don't believe there's any direct relationship, and we're going to get into some of those numbers tonight. I apologize. We do have a lot of slides. I have used a part of the broader course for this. So I'm going to hit these are the same slides you're going to see in the broader class, but I'm going to hit very much the high points in them because I want you guys to understand, again, what are some of those major things that we've seen, what we've really learned out of these incidents, and some useful information to counter the bad information that's out there. So, disclaimer, this is for educational and entertainment purposes only. You're ultimately responsible for your choices in defense and staying legal. The contents covered here today are for informational purposes and no substitute for live training. This course does not meet state minimums. If your state requires CCW training, concealed carry weapons training, but reach out to me if you do have that as a need. I am actually able to teach your CCW course pretty much in any state with your state requirements and satisfying those state requirements, should that be something that you need. Okay. So let's dig in. I'm going to switch our material now to the USCCA material. I do have to teach it kind of as they present it. So I started with a subset of this on how to identify a public threat. And again, I'm going to apologize. Most of y'all know me. I already speak fast enough as it is. I'll work on keeping the rate of speech down. But I also am going to present quite a bit of information on each slide. I'm only going to hit the high points. If you really want to dig into these, I will have them offer at the end for folks that want to attend. There's a multi-day course where I'm going to combine this with the emergency first aid and trauma response. And I'm also going to combine it with a virtual scenario trainer for the folks in the live class that they'll be able to participate in. So, identifying a public threat. Some quick notes that this presentation was updated in March of 2020. So it has been a little bit. Most of the data was actually compiled up to 2019. There's not been a lot of additions to this material there's not been a lot of additions of material since that time. So some of the most latest mass shootings things may not be included in here. But that said, I believe you're going to find that we are going to cover some of the most famous ones that we've heard about, or the most notorious ones we've heard about, and what are some of the realistic data that we've gathered from them. So how do we identify public threats? Okay, know the signs. No, we want to know the signs. We want to recognize them. There's really no single profile that defines a mass shooter. I do need to make one quick distinction. We have two things that we need to be familiar with. One is what we call active shooting events, right? ASEs. The second is a mass shooter. And a mass shooting event is actually one where there's an active shooting event, or ASE, where 4 or more people are killed, if I remember correct. We cover that in just a moment. So Again, there's no single profile that defines a mass shooter. Some could be categorized as psychotic, such as the Virginia Tech shooter. Others, including San Bernardino, Orlando shooters, are motivated or inspired by ISIS or other terrorist organizations. And you'll find, and one thing again, I really like the pragmatic approach to the USCCA's material. They really leave all of the bias out. They try to look at this. In fact, actually, the gentleman that put this course together really said, is like, look, I was willing when I went through this course, if the data did not bear out what I thought, I was to be honest about it. And I think that really does ring true. As I took the course, I believe him that he really did have that as his intent. So we keep a lot of the bias out, and we recognize that you really cannot understand, at least initially, any motives, any particular directors, and there is no single profile. Now that said, most of them, we have some signs. Most of them are seeking fame. All right. There are warning signs. We see quite a bit of information leading up to where in many cases, there's been multiple police interactions with these individuals. They have posted information on social media that people have reported. They have been reported by their own families in some cases. In fact, a couple of the more recent ones, the shooters were reported by their own families, and then the law enforcement has tried to keep the family accountable. So again, this is a very complex subject, lots of opinions. And as my friend Matt Hoy, who is also in this call right here, is from California, he can say that, hey, look, even in, the perspectives of firearms and firearms usage can vary vastly if you're in North Carolina or Alabama or California or anywhere else in the U.S., right? Or anywhere else, even outside of the U.S. So we're really going to try to stick to facts as much as we can and data as much as we can. So while no common profile exists, there are common indicators that you should watch for. In addition, most shooters have left a trail of physical or electronic evidence that was missed by friends or family. In 80% of the mass shootings since Columbine, the shooter told someone in advance about his or her plans and weren't taken seriously. I'd like you all to read that last sentence with me again. And in 80% of the mass shootings since Columbine, the shooter told someone in advance about his or her plans. They weren't taken seriously. Okay? So while the vast majority of individuals who come from broken homes, while a vast majority of individuals who come from broken homes or disengaged parents will never become an active shooter, there are certainly multiple risk factors associated with this. And the single parent homes, broken homes, there are certainly a few of those out there. So multiple failures academically, socially, or romantically, troubled, broken, or abusive homes, disengaged parents, no responsible adult providing oversight in their lives, psychotic symptoms, including hallucinations and delusions. Those are all included. There also are some direct indicators. Risk factors simply indicate that an individual may be at risk, but direct indicators show that actual planning may have begun or they are actually intending to carry it out. It may be impending. The individual actively seeking out a friend or family member for an illegal firearm purchase when the potential shooter is underage. Not only is this a direct indicator, it's also illegal and must be reported. It's what we call straw sales. One of the variety of things that can happen in a straw sale. Okay, where one person legally purchases a firearm with the intent of giving it to a person who cannot or illegally possess the firearm. Okay. And unexplained or uncharacteristic stockpiling of firearms, ammunition, or components that could be used to manufacture explosives. Written documentation, such as specific plans for an attack, or violent fictional stories written with real-world settings or actors. I would also include things like maps, routes, and like in the case of the Las Vegas shooter, Mandalay Bay, he actually had range cards. He had developed range cards for distances and angles. Direct warnings for friends or family members to stay away from an area on a specific day or time. Direct threats, specifically stating grievances and or plans verbally or in writing, a journal as part of a writing assignment. So direct indicators on social media. Posts expressing an admiration for past mass shooters. This is a very, very common one. We'll talk about a little more in the larger course. Admiration for ISIS, Al-Qaeda, or other terrorist organizations. Positive references to Hitler or Nazi Germany. Racist comments, those could also certainly be included, or comments which could be taken as thoughts of suicide. Okay. Photos showing the individual pointing a firearm directly at the camera or at his or her own head. Both of these photos, there's actually I have the photos hidden, but there are a couple of photos in the one that in the main course that show you the mass shooters from Virginia, and I believe another one that posted on social media long before the shooting. So Some of those indirect indicators, socially dysfunctional, difficulty relating emotionally with others, possible bullying tendencies. Contrary to popular belief, most mass shooters have not been bullied, instead tended to be the bully. Okay, this is one thing that the research really did not prove out what some of the original thoughts would be. Frame of mind on social media or in the student's writing, which may show a specific desire for violence, can indicate the feelings of despair, feeling being disenfranchised, or that the world is conspiring against them. Parkland warning signs. At least 30 people had knowledge of the shooter's troubling behavior before that they did not report, or information was not acted on by people who received these threats. There's at least 6 people who stated they brought concerns about the assailant and his behavior, including discussions about him being a school shooter, to Assistant Principal Jeff Morford. Morford denies every one of these reports, claims he does not recall. Instagram post said, "I want to shoot people with my AR-15. I want to die fighting, killing shit ton of people. I'm going to law enforcement one day, and they go after the good people." It seems pretty direct to me. The trend definitely is increasing. We're not going to look into this data too much, but the Columbine shooting was, 1999, if I remember correct? And really that's kind of kicked off what we now to believe mass shooting events. That actually has changed a lot of things. A lot of police tactics have had to evolve as well. In the larger course, we do go into a lot of things about police response time, some of the ways that they have adapted to their procedures accordingly, and things that you need to be aware of about how they're going to act in a mass shooting incident, how they're going to engage a target, and what that means for you if you find yourself in one. Has been a direct correlation, however, to growth of social media. ASEs are the theories. There's a lot of theories as to why ASEs or active shooting events trends is accelerating. One of the simplest explanations is the rise of ASEs has matched the increase in popularity and usage of social media platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. Okay? The goal of most mass shooters that we've seen is some type of notoriety. In fact, they quite often post they want to beat the score of their previous shooters, or they glorify previous shooters. So one theory that we can work with is what we call the threshold of violence. And probably something that you may be more familiar with is the broken windows analogy. And so like you talk about how you'll see an abandoned building that will have all the windows are still intact. But as soon as one window gets broken, all the rest of them do. So quite literally, people will see something, they'll say, well, because somebody else did it, now it's okay for me to do it. This is also the theory that Rudy Giuliani used when he was cleaning up the subways and all the graffiti in the subways in New York. And so one of the things that he did is he would completely cleaned all the subway cars. And if a subway car had any vandalism on it or any graffiti whatsoever, it was immediately pulled from service and cleaned that night. And that resulted in far less graffiti showing up on all the subway cars. Again, this theory that the first person does it and now everybody else thinks okay. This trend does appear to follow in the threshold of violence as well. It may explain a rise in active shooter events. The theory states the likelihood someone will join in on a social process will be based upon the number of people, the proportion of people already engaged in that action. You can use this theory when looking at riots and other social unrest that, that individuals or small groups of people would probably never burn or loot or destroy. But when large groups of people are starting to act en masse, suddenly what is acceptable becomes kind of the groupthink, and what was previously completely unforeseen, or what somebody would have never considered to be okay, suddenly seems to be okay because it's the, hey, everybody else is doing it trend. So when did fame become a career choice? The shooter who killed 9 at Rosenberg, Oregon, Umpqua Community College was apparently susceptible to the allure of instant fame, and that other mass shooters have been attracted to. Prior to his attack, he posted online he admired the infamy of the gunman who shot and killed reporter Allison Parker, photojournalist Adam Ward, employs the CBS affiliate station WDBJ in Roanoke, Virginia in 2015. Okay. Since, from 2000 to 2018, there have been 277 recorded ASE events. One thing I like to make sure I point out before anybody starts giving, and I've had people do this in other settings, that, hey, that those are going to all be a particular race or a particular kind or anything like that, or they're all going to be right wing or left wing. All that you can pretty well throw out the window. Pretty much meaningless comparisons. And I will tell you that if you look at crime statistics, they really don't back up a lot of the propaganda that's out there. But if you look at, I know that a lot of people certainly are concerned that mass shooting events are going to occur. Thankfully, they still tend to be fairly rare. But kind of like airplane crashes, though, there's a lot of people that are terrified of getting on an airplane when the odds are, far better in your favor for flying than they are for driving a car. But it's the public perception and the enormity of these events that tend to, make people think and see. They tend to think they're going to be much more likely to occur to them because they are very large public events that get a lot of public attention. So 277 ASEs have been recorded by FBI data. 70 of these meet the FBI's definition of a mass shooting, which is 4 or more fatalities. 633 people were killed at mass shootings, not including counting up the mass shooter. 578 were wounded at mass shootings. This is from 2000 to 2018, roughly. 96% of mass shooters were male, with an average age of 34 years old. Trend that we've seen over the last couple of years, the last few years, has also been on trans identifying. We'll get into that one, but that is not something that has been widely made public. Breakdown of mass shooting by location type. We see 50% of them happen within businesses. About 11% of them tend to happen outdoors. 9% are in houses of worship. 6% have been at private residences. 8% at government properties, and only 16% have been at schools. I think most people would think most of the mass shooters will actually happen at schools, but we still see that businesses lead with about 50%. Lead probably not something I really want to be known for. Now, here's something that's very important. I'm not going to cover this in detail, but I am going to hit a few points. Anybody know what the average response time is of a police response from a 911 call to a police being on scene nationwide? Anybody know what that average time is?
10 minutes?
It's about between 9 and 11 minutes. That's right. Somewhere between as fast as 4, but mainly between about 9 and 11 minutes. Okay. Now, here's something else to look at. What is the average time in an active shooting or a mass shooter event from the start of the event to the first 911 call? It's about 4 minutes. Okay. So active shooting events, mass shooter events, tend to be already going on for up to 4 minutes before the first 911 call goes off. Okay. Now you have 4 minutes, and we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. We'll go with the 9 minutes. Now you're at 13 before they're on scene. What's going to happen next? The next thing that's going to happen is they're going to have to organize. They're going to have to organize and plan entry. Now they do this now, whereas prior to mass shooting events becoming more prevalent, they would have made pretty quick. They would have done like a hostage situation or something like that. They would have sat and they would have planned for a considerable amount of time, like working to negotiate with a hostage taker or something like that. Active shooting events and mass shooting events has changed the police behavior and police response calls, that they are going to make entry into a building more quickly. That said, they're still going to need between 2 to 7 minutes to make that plan before they make entry. And that's even including if they have officers already on the scene, like, for example, school resource officers, okay? SRO, school resource officers. They're still going to need to know where, have an identity on the shooter of some type, have an idea where they are, and a plan to enter that building. So you're still talking about from the time that a mass shooting event starts, it could be up to 13 to 20 minutes before police are going to actually make arrival on the scene. So let's talk about some of those numbers that I've been kind of giving some hints on. Well, reducing the magazine size work, okay? So let's look what some fairly nominal rates are. So a magazine capacity of 5 rounds to achieve a lesson with 11 reloads per minute, you could get about 55 rounds a minute. This is assuming about 2 rounds per trigger. This is assuming about 2 rounds per second. So firing at about 2 rounds per second with somebody with a semi-automatic rifle with a moderate amount of training, or at least even more familiarity, could pull the trigger pull at about 2 rounds per second. Okay. Somebody that's trained could do this more like 4 rounds per second. I'm up around the 4 to 5 rounds per second. And that's what I've been doing this for many years. Okay. Thankfully, most of our mass shooters really have not had that type of training. But just to put it in perspective, these statistics are made upon an assumption of about 2 rounds per second that are being fired by your average shooter. So with a 5-round magazine, this is going to result in a rate of fire of about 55 rounds per minute, but it's also going to require 11 magazine changes to hit that number. Okay. Magazine changes take anywhere from 1 to 3 seconds, depending upon the efficiency of a person using it. 10 rounds at 10 round capacity, we have 7.5 reloads required per minute and an effective firing rate of up to 75 rounds per minute. With a 30-round magazine, we have a 3.3 reloads required on average per minute and a effective firing rate of up to 100 rounds per minute. Okay. I would say that if I really was burning rounds out, I could probably come close to 100 rounds a minute, and I've been doing this for a long time. So right away, that theoretical maximum rate of fire is kind of complicated. Okay. So let's look at one state law, Connecticut. They thought that after Sandy Hook, that if they reduced the magazine size from 30 to 10, that they would never have a mass shooting event like that again. So where we talked about before, remember, our theoretical maximum on a 30-round magazine would get you around 100 rounds per minute with 2 rounds per minute second, firing a rate of 2 rounds per second and 3.3 magazine changes per minute. 100 rounds per minute, 2 rounds every second, 3.3 magazine changes would get you to about 100 rounds a second. Now, what if you reduce from 30 to 10? That only gets us down to a theoretical maximum of about 75 rounds per minute. Arguably not a very big difference, okay? This is a theoretical maximum under stress and under fire, okay? Here's the problem. In the Sandy Hook shooting, the shooter had fired average of only 31 rounds per minute, and that's one of the higher rates of fire we're going to discuss here. So at 31 rounds per minute, that's 1 round every 3 seconds, roughly. You could do that with a 10-round magazine, a 5-round magazine. You could actually do that even with a bolt-action rifle and feeding it if you needed to, okay? So the rate of fire doesn't equal anything to do or have any correlation that we can see to the theoretical maximum that we could achieve with a 30-round magazine or a 10-round magazine, okay? 31 rounds per minute is 1 magazine per minute in a 30-round magazine or 3 magazines in a 10-round. Most people can do 3 magazine changes within a matter of about 10 seconds total across that entire time. So rates of fire before and after reduction. So 100 rounds per minute down to 10. So from a 30-round magazine down to a 10-round. We've already seen that. But what if we go down to my video is actually hiding slide on accident. 4 rounds per minute, 47 minutes. They had unrestricted access to the environment. Okay. I have questions. Anybody still think after this that it has anything to do, like if you were to reduce the size of the magazines or the number of rounds that could be fired, does anybody think this would have any result or impact onto the data that is here?
Well, and I live in a state where they were originally dropped to 10.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. And I think there was one in shooting. I don't remember. There was one shooting in Florida. The killer actually used 10-round magazines, right? It had really no bearing. I don't remember which one that was off the top of my head. Okay. I think most of us have known, like, especially if you are a firearms enthusiast or you're dedicated to shooting sports, most of us have known for quite a while that magazine size and rates of fire would have really little bearing on what would happen in these mass shootings. So again, regulating the type of the weapon, regulating the rates of fire, the size of the magazine, any of those things really has had no bearing whatsoever. And this data, I believe, pretty well supports that. Okay. So in other words, saying that we're going to reduce magazine size is going to reduce mass. So let's summarize here. The premise magazine capacity has anything to do with the number of dead and mass casualty, mass shooting events seems to be pretty much completely without merit. Right? Even the Aurora shooter, who had a 100-round magazine, drum magazine, as mentioned earlier, had a rate of fire no faster than 1 round every 4 to 7 seconds, which is no quicker than a single-shot rifle. Rapid fire didn't really matter to him. So again, I do believe that these numbers are a pretty good case for how magazine capacity and rates of fire, and even we're going to get into calibers here in a few minutes, have very little to do with ultimately how many people are impacted or how many people are injured or unfortunately lose their life during a mass shooting incident. Okay? In fact, with up to 20 minutes of unrestricted time, you see a lot of these shooters, the rate of fire is going to have very little bearing. It's going to be there's going to be other factors to look at. So, are high-powered rifles or assault weapons to blame? Okay. Anyway, we won't get into that discussion too much. I will go in to show you this. Anybody know? In fact, Matt, you can't answer this one. Which one is the 223 round? The one that fired the AR-15? Here's a hint. It's not the big scary one. It's this one. It's the one on the far left, right? The round on the left, the AR-15. you can actually achieve the same rate of fire, higher rate of fire with 308, with 30-6, with a variety of other calibers out there, and they're going to be far more lethal. Has really nothing to do with the bullet either. In fact, actually, as we're going to see here in a moment, high-powered rifles of blank. AR-15 is the smallest one on the far left. So it isn't just physically smaller. It also falls dramatically below the popular deer hunting rounds, the 12-gauge, double-aught buck, triple-aught, 3-aught buck. It should be double-aught buck. In kinetic energy, add to the 12-gauge, triple-aught. Buckshot fires 6 to 8 projectiles, all 45% larger than the hole made by a single Remington 223 bullet. Okay. It also has really, again, the Virginia Tech shooter. One of the firearms he used was a 22 pistol, the Walther 22 here. It's really considered to be a plinking round. He killed quite a few people with that one. And again, his average was shooting each person 2 to 3 times, as opposed to 1 round. Okay. 22 long rifle round is so tiny that most people wouldn't give it serious consideration as a defensive or offensive round, with just 100 foot-pounds of energy, less than 1/12 the energy of a Remington 223. Yet it was used to be quite effectively lethal in the Virginia Tech shooting. Yet when fired into the human body at close range, the results will be as fatal as any other round. Now, what about gun-free zones? So we've covered magazine size, we've covered high-powered rifles. What about gun-free zones? Surely there's going to be something here, right? Well, 74% of shootings happened in gun-free zones from 2000 to 2018, right? 13% of those were not in gun-free zones, 9% were outdoors, and unknown were 5%. I'm not sure about those. Okay. In fact, actually, one of the things that we've seen we'll cover in the broader course is that shooters research gun-free zones. They research soft targets. They research places that have specifically implemented rules such as this, because why? Their goal is notoriety, their goal is fame, their goal is to kill as many people as possible. So why would they intentionally enter an area that had defenses up? In fact, actually, one of the things that we've seen is, I don't believe it's up to the data in this course, there's not a single mass shooting event that has ever been shown to have defeated one or more security barriers in order to conduct the shooting. Okay? None of them. None of them have they defeated any high security measures or even moderate security measures in order to be able to conduct their attack. They have all gone after soft targets. All of them. Okay? So I'm only going to hit this one briefly. The course has some really good material about the Virginia Tech shooting. And in the Virginia Tech shooting, on the second floor, there were 5 different rooms. All 5 rooms did 5 different things and had 5 different outcomes. So one of the rooms, the people in the room did absolutely nothing to defend themselves. They basically just gave up and died. Okay. Not only did those people in that room, not only did they do nothing, the shooter entered that room, left, came back several minutes later, and continued to kill several more people with absolutely no resistance. Okay. Another one of those rooms, the students and the teachers blocked and barricaded the doors. And because when the shooter made an attempt to try to enter them, they just gave up and went on to another room. All right. Another one, students and teachers used themselves to hold the door back against the shooter. The shooter did fire several rounds through the door, wounded, and I believe actually may have killed a couple of people in that one, but almost everybody else in that room actually ended up okay. Another one, the professor actually barricaded the door with their own body. The professor sadly lost their life, but all of the other students were able to get to safety. Right? The moral of the story here, and again, one we'll get into more detail in the broader course, is that fighting back or putting any resistance up against a mass shooter does have an actual effect against them. They're there to create as much havoc as they can in the least amount of time. So as a result, they're not going to take any time from what we have seen so far. They're really not going to take any time to defeat any of these protections. If with any amount of resistance, they're going to move on to a softer target where they're going to continue to be able to make as many people dead as they're able to do so. All right. So this is a really good case study, though, because again, in one particular shooting instance, we have 5 rooms that behave. All 5 did different things, and they all had 5 different outcomes. I believe it's a very good case for what can be done in response to a mass shooter. Okay. So what about universal background checks? Because that's another one we hear. So we should background check everybody. We can get rid of the quote unquote gun show loophole and some other things out there, or individual sales. Surely that's going to do it, because background checks are going to make sure that we identify anybody that might be a mass shooter. The question is, would universal background checks have prevented any any of the 70 plus mass shootings that have occurred since Columbine. Okay. So the question is, how many of the 71 since 1998, the year NICSBN, would have been blocked? Would have been blocked. So you have to fill out this form. Everybody here that's ever purchased a firearm would be familiar with this form. Are you an unlawful user? Are you in the state, in the U.S. illegally? Do you intend to distribute it? So since the NICS checks began and became law in November of 1998, transfers of firearms have fallen really into 4 categories. We're going to cover some of these briefly here. So purchases from federally firearms licensed or FFL dealers that already requires an NICS background check. Transfers that the buyer and seller knew were illegal sales, for example, illegal straw sales, where someone purchased a firearm on behalf of someone that is illegal for them to possess. Firearms that were stolen from family members or others during burglaries, or legal transfers between private parties that did not require a background check. Now, in the Groner course, we're going to go into some more detail behind these. However, one of the things that we found that in the case of these mass shootings, there was really none of these categories would have potentially been covered by universal background checks. So let's start to draw some conclusions. All right. We've looked at magazine size. We've looked at rates of fire. We've looked at gun-free zones. We've looked at universal background checks. And I think that the numbers pretty well speak for themselves, that really we cannot find any causality. We cannot find any direct link between any of these quote unquote solutions that are being pushed and what is actually reflected in the data that happens in these mass shootings. So it's really, let's start to draw some things down here. It's really not the magazines. It's not the size. It's not the size of the magazine, not the number of rounds, not the rates of fire, any of those things that we've covered. It's the time. It's the time that the attackers have unrestricted within the environment. And we've already seen that most mass shootings last between 4 and 9 minutes. Some have lasted longer. We also see that the average police response, the first 911 call is going to happen within about 4 minutes. And then it's going to be another 4 to 11 minutes for the police to respond, several minutes for them to organize their response and engage a shooter. Again, and a lot of times what we've seen in most of these is the event is already over by this time or will be soon drawing to a close. It's not the magazines, it's the time. So we need something to deal with that time frame. And how do we limit the lethality and the ability for the shooters to move within an environment and to conduct their attack while the rest of the response is being organized? So gun-free zones also tend to be very much when we've seen killing zones, right? There's no restriction. And if you don't have anything in place to stop them, there's from what we've seen here on the police response times and the mass shoot and the shooting rates, everything adds up to the shooter really is, if they have as much time as they want, they're going to be able to conduct their attack in any way they choose. Now, we did at least start to touch into the subject here tonight that there are things that make a difference. Fighting back makes a difference. In every case that we have seen where the people tried to fight back, it either stopped the mass shooter, they gave up, they ran away, or they moved on to a softer target. So we go through this a lot more in the more broad course. We'll go into a lot more detail into a lot of these different events, what did and what did not work. But more importantly, we're also going to get into a couple of models for the security systems and things that we can put in place where they've actually been put in place, and ones that we know that actually will work. Number one, again, we've not actually had a single mass shooting that people have bypassed multiple security mechanisms in order to conduct the mass shooting. They give up and they move on. Number two, they research those soft targets. So if you don't have a soft target or a gun-free zone, then certainly the shooters are much more dissuaded to go after them. Plus, if there actually is an active shooting event, there are ways that we can make sure that we can lock and barricade doors, that we can fog the hallways, we can bombard the shooter with lots of disorienting noise, sounds, lights, all kinds of things like that are probably going to either make them give up or move away, or at least reduce the lethality of their attack. That active response might be barricading a door, running away, escaping from a window, fighting back. But in all cases, survival rates exponentially rise. And then again, I don't want to make light of anybody and the choices they made at Virginia Tech or any of the other ones. However, I do believe it's significant that we look at the behavior of the folks at all of those rooms and the very different outcomes that resulted. Okay. Bottom line is fighting back makes a difference. As witness of Virginia Tech, without formal training at school, work, or house of worship or home, you cannot expect the average person to devise a plan the moment the gunfire erupts. Okay. So with that, folks, again, I have covered quite a bit of material in a fairly short amount of time. And like I said, I don't want to shortchange anybody of the material that's in the more broad course. However, again, I look to combine this course with not only the countering the mass shooter threat with a lot more of the material, but also combining it with emergency first aid and trauma response, so that if you unfortunately do find yourselves in one of these situations, number one, you're going to know that run, hide, and fight actually does work. Number two, if you are somebody that does carry a firearm and you are in a place that you're allowed to do so, that you will probably, understanding that any type of response typically is going to dissuade the shooter. But also more importantly, that there are solutions that we know that are out there that are cost effective. When we look at those numbers, I think we'll see when you see that sticker at first, you kind of scratch your head, but then you're realizing in comparison to what everybody else spent. And I will tell you, because I think it is relevant, in response to the Sandy Hook shooting, there was another school where the county sheriff, if I remember correct, decided to kind of buck the traditional wisdom of gun-free zones and rates of fire and magazine size and everything else. And they went through and they put a comprehensive security system in place that included a pendant that all the teachers wore around their neck, that they could hit that at any given point that would automatically lock all the doors. As soon as you locked all the doors, there would be a fogger system that would fog all the hallways to make it impossible for people to see, namely the shooter to be able to see and conduct their attack, would also bombard with loud noises and a variety of other things. This also included man traps, bulletproof glass, hardened doors, and the entire cost of this very comprehensive system that we'll go into detail was about $400,000. Okay. Now, I've already heard people say, oh, well, no, we need to still reduce magazine size because $400,000 is just too expensive for most schools. Anybody know what the average cost of a high school football stadium is? About $6.5 million. Okay. $6.5 million. And the thing is, if we start to add up computers, we start to add up school programs, we start to add up things like gymnasiums and football stadiums. And I realize there's a lot of places in the U.S. that really will struggle with some of these costs. But the reality is that even with a subset of some of those protections, there are viable protection mechanisms that can be put in place. And that, again, like I said, even with a few of those protections, it's very likely that the mass shooters are not going to get very far past the door. So there are cost-effective solutions. There are real solutions. And I believe by the end of the course, I'm certainly happy to entertain some questions or comments. But I hope that USCCA has made a really good case here for there are solutions out there. They are not what you are hearing in the public media. In fact, actually, again, one of my goals for this course and the broader course is not only to prepare you more for dealing with this threat, or if you do find yourself, unfortunately, in one of these situations, being able to treat the wounded, being able to organize a response. But at the end of the day, there are solutions out there. My goal was for you all to be able to become better advocates in your community for things that actually can work, right? And start to counter these very poor messages that ultimately are going to lead to more people into being injured, killed, or dead in these types of situations. So with that, I would like to open it up for any questions or comments, or anybody that would like to offer any of their own stories or anecdotes. I certainly open the floor to any of you all this evening.
I do have a question about why the Columbine shooter had 48 minutes?
Yeah. Okay. So that was a black swan moment. That was a tipping point moment. Okay. So your police doctrine and a lot of your other, your police doctrine, your military doctrine, even the response doctrines up until that time would have been more geared towards hostage situations, where police response would have been to arrive on scene, organize a response, make contact with the shooters or the assailants, make contact with the hostage taker, and then try to negotiate. That was your main police response prior to that time. Active shooting events have shown that that is not the goal of active shooters and mass shooters. So as a result, you have seen police response times and police response tactics adapt accordingly based upon the nature of that threat. So it's still not completely sufficient. You're still down again, you have to deal with when the call gets made. Oh, speaking of it, in that school solution I just mentioned a moment ago, the minute one of those teachers hits that pendant, not only does it lock all the doors, also locates where the shooter is based upon where that response is, and it also notifies law enforcement and 911. So that 4 minutes to the 911 call is gone, right? The officers arriving on scene, not knowing where the assailant is, gone. They're going to have a full map of where the assailant is in that building at any given point. All of those things that were contributing factors to the lethality of these other scenarios that we looked at are off the table with a solution that arguably is really not that expensive, okay? In fact, actually, I think most school systems would be able to raise that money or grant money. We can get grant money for all kinds of other things from the federal government. So why can't we get grant money for something that will actually work? So yeah, so that's the main reason is police response times and best methods and tactics prior to Columbine were all going to be around more hostage negotiation. So that was why it would have been that probably was the largest contributing factor to how long they were able to be there. Okay. Any other questions? Matt, I saw you had a hand raised, sir. Please.
Are you going to do any classes as to if I am armed and I happen to be in public, even if I pull or don't pull, what to do
Yes.
on the fact that, I am armed,
Right.
and you know that they have you come out even though you are not the shooter,
Right.
with hands up.
Yep. So actually, yes, I do have some courses and part of the UCCA material and partly my own. USCCA actually provides me quite a bit of flexibility on what we offer. But yeah, I actually do have some, what do you do in an armed response? How do you not get confused as one of the shooters? Because that certainly could be one of the things that can happen. In fact,
It did happen in Texas.
that's right. It did happen in Texas. That's right. There are certain ways, I will tell you this, that obviously if you are the one that is, if you're the one that is responding to a mass shooter potentially, probably one of the first things I would recommend is that, in fact, I actually have a weapon with me. I'll give you the demonstration. You hold your weapon in the stool position, the low position like this, right? And you keep it like this. And there's a big difference between that and I'll see if I can get into the camera here without looking too bad. All right. So I don't want to aim at the camera, but so as opposed to coming in this position like this, right? That's one of the, is that you need to have positive target identification. That's certainly one recommendation. Plus, not to mention, if I knew that police were starting to respond and they were in my area, that's one of the first things I would do would be to actually reconceal my weapon, unless I actually had eyes on the shooter or was about to have eyes on the shooter. Right? I would go ahead and conceal at that point.
That I'll also have these things so you can wear
What do you got there?
your CCW,
Okay.
so you can have your hands in
Yep.
and everything holstered.
Yep. I would say that's a really big one. No matter the situation, if you will conceal carry or open carry or any of those, if you end up with an encounter with law enforcement, it's like just the term is called furtive movement. They're looking for people that do like jerky things. They're the indicator that they actually may be part of the threat. Okay. You want to stay as calm as possible. Officer, what would you like me to do? And you follow their instructions explicitly. Do exactly what they say. This is no time to be a constitutional hero for those that might want to try to do that, to make an attempt at that. This is a time to listen to exactly what they say, because they are going to come in ready to engage anything that looks like a threat, including you if you act accordingly. Okay. So I like that. Thank you, Matt. I appreciate the suggestion there. Yeah. So I do cover that in our concealed carry courses about interaction with law enforcement. Some of the things that you do need to consider if you are going to be part of an armed response. We do cover that quite a bit. Plus, not to mention the concealed carry courses that we offer do go through legal use of force, all the different considerations that you have for shoot and no shoot. Plus, every single state is different. Okay. In the 1 hour concealed carry course that I do a live demonstration of the USCCA's reciprocity map. So they have a great app. They also have a great tool on their website for the reciprocity, where I can drill into the laws about where my permit is good in neighboring states, what the laws over those states are, like stand your ground, castle doctrine, duty to retreat, duty to inform, use of force criteria, whether or not you can protect property or it can only be human life. All of those things are covered in great detail in that course. So, okay. Yep.
I added for California, they just changed where we can and can't carry.
Right.
Could you let USCCA know they need to update that map?
Yeah, I actually would be glad to do so. They do a pretty good job of keeping that up.
We just had a law change like 3 months ago.
If you know the law, if you have the code, send it to me. I'd be happy to walk over.
I sent it to you in the chat.
Awesome.
In the chat
Okay.
right now.
Yep. I will send that to my contact. Speaking of which, all right, if you're interested in USCCA, I am a member. I am also obviously an instructor, so I'm not only was. Yep. I highly recommend them. They also have concealed carry insurance. I carry concealed carry insurance in one of their 3 tiers. I also have another one that I carry as well in case there is ever a use of force situation. If you find yourself in a use of force situation, you are most likely going to have legal consequences or potential legal consequences. So having CCW insurance is highly recommended. If you're interested in USCCA, that code, that QR code that's up there at the top, if you scan that, I get a bit of a nod, obviously, for anybody that participates in the class, that I provide them a referral, but it will take you to also a good resource to where you can find additional training, additional certification, CCW insurance. In fact, actually, they have their whole Protectors Academy where you can go through a progression of taking courses online and then meeting with a USC and CCA instructor like myself for the live qualification, for the firing qualifications for each one of the levels. And they have a really good breadth of material that's out there available. So, I will say this, I haven't really showing it, but I haven't really worked all this out quite yet. But I am looking to offer this broad course as part of a 2-day course, also combined along with emergency first aid. And I also have a virtual scenario trainer. It's a laser range with a SIRT pistol. It's just like a SIRT pistol rather, but it is a pistol that actually has blowback and fires an IR laser. And then it has a shoot, no shoot scenario trainer. So I am looking to offer this course as both online and in person. The first run of this course, I'm probably going to do the virtual along with the in-person. That'll be sometime in December. Right now, I'm planning on doing it November 16th, 17th, or December 14th, 15th. I haven't quite decided yet. If you are interested in taking the 2-day course, online or virtual, if you attended today's course or you attend on the audio recording, I will offer you 25% off and combine those courses together. So you can take the 2 to 2.5 day, well, it'll be a 2-day total course along with a virtual scenario trainer. And I'll show you guys what that looks like here in just a minute. Too soon. Quick fire on that trigger tonight. Okay. The USCCA instructor schedule, if you've followed that bit.ly link, will take you to all the classes that I'm offering at any given point. You can either sign up for one that's scheduled or you can request a date. Okay. Right now, I'm tentative looking at offering this course on the 16th and 17th of November. I have not decided on that yet. If anybody's interested in that course and does have a preference on a date, whether either 14, 15 December or November 16th or 17th, let me know. I'm really happy to put that together. I do have a place where we're going to host it. And this is going to be, again, an in-person course along with a virtual range. Plus, I'm going to record it and offer it virtual for those that wish they are not able to attend locally. At Heart of Dixie Harley-Davidson in Pelham, Alabama on December 11th at 6 p.m. I have been actually enrolled in USCCA's partner program. As part of their partner program, they will do promotion and fill the seats for an event, and I'm obligated to do one event a month for them. So we are going to have a shoot or no shoot, a shoot I shoot seminar for 1 hour on December 11th, and I will actually have a demonstration of the virtual range there as well. Also, I'm going to be announcing in partnership with a friend of mine over in Stone Mountain. She is a 6th or 7th degree black belt in Taekwondo, blue belt in Jiu-Jitsu, several degrees in, oh gosh, I don't remember, something else. Okay, so in other words, she's very, very accomplished in the martial arts world. We're going to put together a 2-day women's only course where we're going to include not only the concealed carry and defensive pistol usage with a live fire component on one day, we're also going to conclude a lot of her content that she does for unarmed, she calls it open hand or unarmed strike. I call it unarmed combatives, but a variety of different defensive techniques that, and the class will be geared very specifically towards women. She does a great job with this course. I've seen it. And I've also watched her do her thing. She's really incredible and does a great job. We're going to be offering that course not only in Alabama, but also over in Georgia. So there'll be several options to attend that 2-day workshop. Okay. This is a quick example of that laser trainer I was mentioning. This is something actually I'm really looking forward to that has shoot, no shoot scenarios. There's 100 live that are built in. We can also do our own, and we'll be able to, based upon the participants and how they perform, we can either escalate or de-escalate. This can be used for very, very useful live fire, live scenario type training, where we can get people very familiar with what these situations are going to look like. You can do things like practice your different carry techniques, whether you're going to appendix carry, off body carry, out of band, inside a waistband, off body, on body. I think I mentioned that one already. In your purse, in a bag. You can come try these out in a scenario trainer. Very useful and practical real life type scenarios. I also have Mantis trainers that if you're really interested in perfecting your marksmanship, whether it be defensive training or just in shooting drills in particular, you want to be a better shot, better marksman, or work on becoming a competitive shooter. I have been a competitive shooter at different times. I love competing. So these tools are fantastic. They can really drill us into things like your left ring finger was too tight on the grip for that shot. So really perfecting your trigger draw, your presentation, your barrel discipline, all the rest of those things, we can use this live feedback to really help you narrow down what you need to improve. I also even have become a real big fan of the Ace Trainer that you use with the MetaQuest 3 headset. This is geared more towards the competition angle. Like it looks like the three gun matches, for example. But this virtual trainer, the only thing that is different between this and real life is the bang and the recoil. This is the only thing that's different. Everything else, if you want to practice your red dot skills, if you want to practice your target transitions, use of cover, a lot of the other techniques. In fact, actually, again, that's something I really spent a lot of time on the last couple of years, was modernizing my use of cover techniques and target transitions to tactics that have evolved quite a bit since my military days. And I will say, I wish I'd known this in the military days. It would have been far more effective at that time. So with that, I will open the floor up again for any other questions. There is my contact information. I did actually launch the website. I'm still working on that one. You're welcome to reach out to me at any time, and I will send the links and information out afterwards for anybody that might be interested in signing up for the larger course. So I am judging a little bit of interest at this point in that course. So if you guys are interested in that or wish to participate, by all means, drop me a note, drop me a Facebook, send me an email. Let me know about that, because I'm really trying to make sure that I bring an offering together that will be something that will be of use to the students and something that you'll definitely gain a lot of benefit from. So with that, thank you. I really appreciate your time this evening. Please sign up to that USCCA website if you have any interest there on that. And also, again, feel free to reach out. I will remain here behind for a few more minutes for anybody else that would like to have any other discussion or questions or comments or feedback for me as an instructor. So thank you all very much for your time tonight. I'll get you out of here right at 7 o'clock on the nose. So thank you, everybody.
Bye.